13-year-old boy, an envelope containing $4,000, and the shiny lobby of a swanky bank. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until a suspicious look and an insult came along, sending shockwaves through the history of Global Meridian Bank. It was a bright morning in Glendale, and the sky was crystal clear. Sunlight glimmered off the glass facade of Global Meridian Bank, a renowned financial institution with branches all across the United States. Inside the bank's grand lobby, a 13-year-old boy named Elijah Carter quietly paused to marvel at his surroundings. Elijah was a slender, dark-skinned teenager with short, curly hair. He wore a simple white t-shirt under a gray hoodie, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers. On his shoulder was a plain black backpack with no flashy logos or expensive emblems, just a regular kid in every sense. Yet this wasn't just any day. Elijah had come to the bank to open his first savings account and deposit $4,000, an amount he'd saved up from a combination of math scholarships and small prize winnings. For most adults, $4,000 might not be overwhelming, but to Elijah, it was a milestone marking the beginning of his dream of financial independence. A lesser-known fact was that Elijah was the son of Naomi Carter, the president and CEO of Global Meridian Bank. Despite his mother's position, Elijah wanted to experience a typical banking process without leveraging his family name. He simply wanted to be treated like any other customer, to see how the bank would truly respond if they didn't know his background. As he stepped deeper into the lobby, Elijah admired the polished marble floors, the gleaming crystal chandeliers overhead, and the impeccably dressed employees hustling back and forth with documents. Their formal suits and professional smiles radiated authority, but also a certain aloofness. Amid this grandeur, Elijah felt both a sense of excitement and a hint of nervousness. He took a deep breath. "I'll show them that even a black kid in a hoodie can have legitimate savings," he thought, finding resolve in his mother's advice on standing up for himself. Little did he know that this routine deposit would set off a chain of events powerful enough to shake the entire bank, revealing hidden injustices few had anticipated. The clock read 9:00 a.m. and business had just begun. Although it wasn't very crowded yet, Elijah noticed how each customer was being treated. A well-dressed white woman with a designer handbag arrived and was ushered immediately into a private VIP room. No waiting in line, no questions asked. Across the floor, an older Asian gentleman tried to open an account and was asked to wait repeatedly. The teller barely offered assistance, appearing impatient with his accent. Another man, possibly Hispanic, judging by his accent and work clothes, stood at a counter for nearly 10 minutes, trying to cash a $500 check, while the teller grilled him about his employment contract, Social Security details, and more. Elijah found these scenes unsettling. He realized that a pattern was emerging. Well-dressed, seemingly wealthy white customers received quick, respectful service, while individuals of color or more modest means got interrogated or made to wait endlessly. He glanced down at his own outfit. A hoodie, jeans, battered sneakers. "I might not look like someone who has thousands of dollars," he thought, an uneasy feeling rising in his stomach. Nevertheless, he decided to remain calm and see for himself how he would be treated. Armed with the deposit slip he had been handed, Elijah joined the queue at teller window number 3. He noticed that despite arriving earlier, he was continually passed over as newer, wealthier-appearing customers were invited up front by a supervisor named Fiona. Elijah waited almost 30 minutes before it was finally his turn. By then, frustration simmered beneath the surface, but he held on to his composure. At last, the teller waved him over. Her name tag read Annabelle Jenkins. She looked to be in her early 30s, her blonde hair tied back neatly. Elijah set his backpack down and spoke carefully. "Elijah, hi. I'd like to open a savings account and deposit $4,000, please." Annabelle gave him a once-over, her gaze drifting to his hoodie and scuffed shoes. She blinked in surprise. Annabelle, $4,000? Where did you get that much money? Her tone was more suspicious than curious. Elijah braced himself, feeling the tension in the air. Elijah, it's scholarship money and some small prizes I won. I have the documentation right here. He pulled out a neatly folded set of papers. Scholarship certificates, letters of congratulations, and a form his mother had signed authorizing him to open a youth savings account. However, Annabelle's skeptical expression only deepened. She beckoned over Fiona, the supervisor who had been directing certain customers to skip the line. Fiona crossed her arms and frowned. Fiona, a 13-year-old with $4,000? That's quite a lot. Are you sure it's really yours? Elijah took another breath. Elijah, yes, ma'am. I worked hard to earn these scholarships. I'm allowed to open a junior account if I have my guardian's signature, which I do. Still, Annabelle and Fiona exchanged doubtful glances. It was clear they presumed this young black customer was not legitimate. Around them, people whispered, and some pointed. Elijah clenched his fist, recalling his mother's advice. Stay calm. Let them be the ones who look unreasonable. Despite Elijah showing all the required paperwork, the two women continued to press him. Fiona, well, we'll need additional proof. Do you have an ID or anything else? Elijah presented his student ID card. Normally, that sufficed for minors, along with an adult-signed authorization form. But Fiona still shot Annabelle a meaningful look. Fiona whispering, I don't buy it. It's suspicious. Elijah could hear the undertones. What would a black kid in a hoodie be doing with $4,000? At that moment, a tall, dark-haired man in a suit approached. His name badge read, Assistant Manager, Trent Edwards. Trent, what's going on here? Fiona quickly summarized. Trent peered at Elijah, eyeing his clothes, his backpack, and the name Naomi Carter on the Guardian signature line. Trent. Naomi Carter, huh? That name sounds familiar, but there must be plenty of people with that name. He turned back to Fiona and Annabelle. It appeared they silently agreed to stall Elijah until he gave up. The tension around them thickened. Customers in line watched, some in shock, some seemingly intrigued by the drama. Elijah wanted to remain polite, but anger brewed within. Elijah, I'm willing to wait, but please treat me fairly. I'm here to open my own account, that's all. Trent gave a condescending smirk. Trent, you'll see what fair means soon enough. A few more minutes of silence passed, and Fiona stepped away to summon the branch manager. Within moments, a middle-aged woman in a sleek black suit, Helen Marshall, emerged from a glass-walled office. She exuded an air of authority, striding swiftly to the counter. Helen, coolly, I've been told you want to deposit $4,000, young man. Mind explaining the source of the money? Once again, Elijah patiently explained. Helen barely glanced at his documents. Instead, she gave him an icy smile. Helen, and you don't have your mother or father with you? This is highly unusual. Elijah repeated that his mother had pre-signed the forms and that the bank's policy permitted minors to open a savings account under such conditions. Helen's expression darkened. Helen, look, I don't have time to verify every piece of paper. Come back with a parent if you want to do business here. Otherwise, I'll have security remove you for causing a disturbance. Those around them fell silent. Elijah's heart pounded in disbelief. This was beyond mere suspicion. It was an outright threat to eject him. He swallowed hard, tears of frustration burning behind his eyes, but he refused to show weakness. Elijah, I haven't done anything wrong. Why threaten me? Helen leaned in, voice dripping with disdain. Helen, then leave, boy. We won't be repeating ourselves. Elijah realized his attempts at calm negotiation had hit a dead end. He felt cornered, his dignity trampled. Recalling his mother's words, if all else fails, you may call me. He reached into his pocket for his phone. Helen eyed Elijah suspiciously. Helen, who are you calling? Don't tell me this is a bluff? Elijah ignored her, dialing. When the call connected, he spoke clearly. Elijah. Mom, I'm at the Glendale branch of your bank. They won't let me deposit my savings, and they're threatening to call security on me. A hush fell over the lobby. Trent's face tightened. Fiona looked alarmed. Annabelle's eyes darted back and forth. Naomi, over the phone. Elijah, put whoever's in charge on the line, right now. Elijah handed the phone to Helen. She hesitated, pressing it to her ear. Color draining from her face as she heard the cold, authoritative tone of Naomi Carter, the CEO of Global Meridian Bank. Helen stammered quietly, trying to defend herself, but her expressions made it clear she had little to say that could justify her actions. The rest of the staff froze, dread creeping in. Annabelle whispered, Annabelle, the CEO? Could it really be? Moments later, Helen ended the call. Her hand trembled. Without a word, she motioned Trent and Fiona into her office. Annabelle lingered by the counter, panic evident on her face. All eyes in the lobby were now on Elijah, who simply stood there with a mix of relief and simmering anger. Within 15 minutes, the main doors swung open. In strode a group of 5 executives in tailored business suits. Leading them was Naomi Carter herself, calm, poised, but visibly furious. At her side were Brian Phillips, COO, Serena Moss, head of HR, and 2 more high-ranking members of the bank's senior management. Every employee seemed paralyzed at the sight of the CEO entering unannounced. Helen, Trent, and Fiona hurried out of the office, pale and trembling. Naomi Carter wasted no time. She walked straight to Elijah, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, then turned her gaze on Helen. Naomi, Ms. Marshall, kindly explain in front of everyone why you harassed a minor who was simply trying to open an account. Helen's voice quivered as she tried to answer. Helen, I was concerned about suspicious funds, and he didn't have a parent. Naomi's eyes flashed. Naomi, Elijah is my son, but more importantly, he complied with every bank policy for minors. Why was he threatened with security? Why refuse his deposit? Helen fumbled for words. Trent and Fiona stood by, sweat beading on their foreheads. Annabelle looked close to tears. Naomi glanced at Brian Phillips. Naomi, have you reviewed the security footage? Brian nodded. Brian. Yes. We have evidence not just of Elijah's treatment, but also of many other customers of color being treated with undue suspicion or disregard. There's a pattern of preferential service for wealthier-looking white clients and obstruction for others. Gasps rose in the lobby. The silence that followed was suffocating. Naomi took a deep breath. Naomi. Helen Marshall, you are terminated. Effective immediately. Helen's knees nearly buckled. Helen, please. I've been here for 10 years. Naomi. Precisely. After 10 years, you should embody our core values of fairness and respect for our customers. You've undermined them completely. Helen had no defense. She numbly gathered her belongings, tears falling, and left. Trent, Fiona, and Annabelle exchanged fearful looks. Serena Moss, the HR director, took over. Serena. As for you 3, we have video and witness statements showing your roles in discriminating against customers. This is a serious breach of our ethics. Trent pleaded. Trent, I was just following the manager's orders. Naomi shook her head. Naomi, each individual is accountable for their own actions, especially when it comes to treating customers fairly. Your behavior toward Elijah and other clients was unacceptable. Brian Phillips declared the penalties. Trent Edwards, fired immediately. Fiona, fired immediately. Annabelle Jenkins, suspended pending further investigation. Annabelle fell to her knees, begging for mercy. Annabelle, I swear, I didn't mean... Serena remained firm. Serena, you may appeal, but for now, you must leave this branch. 4 people who had participated in humiliating Elijah were gone in a matter of minutes. Some customers quietly applauded, relieved to see justice served. Others stood in uneasy awe at this rapid chain of events. Elijah turned to his mother, a glimmer of guilt in his eyes. "Elijah, I'm sorry, Mom, I had no choice but to call you." Naomi softened. "Naomi, don't apologize. You did your best to handle it alone. I'm proud that you stood up for yourself when pushed too far." Those simple words of understanding soothed Elijah's anger. He exhaled, feeling the tension ease. Elijah still needed to deposit his money. Naomi gestured for a newer employee, a young woman named April Coleman, to assist him. "Naomi, April, please help my son with his account. Do it by the book." April nodded, leading Elijah to another station. She was clearly nervous, but determined to follow proper procedure. In just 10 minutes, Elijah had a newly opened youth savings account funded with his $4,000. No fuss, no interrogation. Meanwhile, across the lobby, an emergency meeting took place with Naomi, Brian Phillips, Serena Moss, and members of the bank's IT and security teams. They analyzed the footage of Glendale's day-to-day operations. It revealed systemic favoritism and discrimination, skipping lines for VIPs, ignoring or heavily questioning minority customers, and so on. Naomi and her leadership team devised a plan of action, a major overhaul, replacing the branch manager. With Helen fired, a new, experienced manager would be assigned immediately. Retraining all employees, mandatory courses on fair service, cultural sensitivity, and non-discrimination. Special monitoring system. Every transaction to be recorded and audited for potential bias. Direct complaint hotline. Customers could contact headquarters if they felt mistreated. Increased transparency, clear guidelines for queuing, and no arbitrary VIP overrides. After issuing an internal memo, Naomi made a public statement in the lobby. "Naomi, Global Meridian Bank apologizes to all customers who have been treated unfairly. We are implementing strong measures to ensure this discrimination ends. Please allow us the chance to correct our mistakes." A wave of approval rippled through. Some customers who had quietly endured poor treatment before felt a newfound sense of validation. Elijah, seated nearby, felt a surge of pride. Despite the humiliation, he had catalyzed a significant shift. News of Elijah's ordeal broke across social media within days. Another customer had recorded a video of him surrounded by suspicious employees, culminating in Naomi Carter's dramatic arrival and subsequent firings. Headlines blared, "CEO's son denied service for looking suspicious." Global Meridian Bank purges staff over racial bias. Reporters flocked to Glendale, interviewing customers who confirmed the long-standing bias. Some had been afraid to complain until now. The incident sparked a broader outcry, pressuring other banks to scrutinize their own policies. Elijah, thrust into the spotlight, was hailed by many as a symbol of courage. Yet he often told journalists, "Elijah, I just wanted to deposit my money. I never planned on being the center of attention. My hope is that nobody else will face what I faced." Nevertheless, it was undeniable that his story had triggered a seismic shift. Alarmed, many financial institutions introduced new guidelines to avoid similar scandals. Traditional-minded shareholders sometimes complained that too much vigilance might hurt profits. But Naomi Carter was resolute. "Naomi, those who care only about profits, not ethics, are free to withdraw their investments. We are here to serve all communities equally, not to enable discrimination." Her bold remark reverberated throughout financial circles, underscoring that GMB's reforms were no mere publicity stunt. Back at the Glendale branch, a new interim manager, Patricia Young, took over. She began implementing the tighter standards day by day, demanding fairness be the guiding principle. Inevitably, some longtime staff grumbled about the new rules. "Why shouldn't we prioritize VIPs?" they argued. Others remained subtly biased but had to conceal it under closer scrutiny. Despite these challenges, there were visible improvements. Diverse customers got more consistent service, fewer arbitrary delays, and far less condescension from tellers. Meanwhile, Elijah felt uneasy at the sudden celebrity swirling around him. Sensational news outlets ran headlines like, "13-year-old shakes up the banking world," or "Young hero challenges financial discrimination." It was overwhelming. One evening, he confided in his mother, Elijah, "Mom, I didn't want to be seen as relying on your position. I just wanted to be a regular customer." Naomi gently reassured him, "Naomi, but you became a voice for those who couldn't speak up. Think of it as both a responsibility and an opportunity to help change things for the better." Elijah realized that by standing up, he could inspire others. He began receiving emails from people across the country who had faced similar discrimination. Slowly, he embraced his emerging role. One day, Elijah got a call from the Harmony Finance Foundation, a nonprofit focused on helping underrepresented communities access fair banking services. They invited him to speak at a youth seminar on financial justice. Initially, Elijah hesitated. He wasn't a trained speaker, but encouragement from his mother and a personal phone call from Marvin Brooks, the organization's director, convinced him. Marvin Brooks: "Elijah, you've exposed a wound many people have endured in silence. We need your first-hand perspective to wake up banks and the public to the reality of discrimination." Elijah agreed. At a modest conference venue in Glendale, he found himself in front of 200 attendees, bank representatives, college students, and previously mistreated customers. Flashing cameras greeted him. His heart pounded, but he took a deep breath. "Elijah, I once believed that if I followed the rules, I'd be treated fairly. But the way I looked, my skin color, my simple clothes, led some people to judge me the moment I walked in. At first I was furious, but I learned that if we stay silent, this keeps happening. I hope no one else has to feel the way I did." A standing ovation followed. In the wings, Naomi Carter watched with pride, knowing her son had grown more confident through adversity. A week later, fresh allegations emerged that other branch managers within Global Meridian Bank were still quietly prioritizing wealthy clients over lower-income customers. Public trust wavered. "Are GMB's promises just window dressing?" Naomi responded immediately with an emergency press conference. "Naomi, we acknowledge this issue may go beyond one branch. I take responsibility as CEO. We have begun extensive measures but will now go further." She unveiled the Fair Finance Project, a year-long initiative that included reevaluating every branch's customer service practices, creating a financial fairness council comprising independent experts, customer representatives, and a youth delegate, rewarding employees who actively safeguard fair treatment. Most notably, Naomi announced that Elijah Carter would join this council as the youth representative. Some questioned how a 13-year-old could contribute, but Naomi insisted, "Naomi, he has first-hand experience. He understands how it feels to be judged as unworthy of standard banking services." 3 months later, to gauge the impact of their reforms, Elijah accompanied his mother and a monitoring team back to the Glendale branch. While the marble floors and chandeliers were unchanged, the atmosphere felt markedly friendlier. A black senior citizen and his grandson were promptly greeted at the teller window. An Asian woman received careful guidance on opening a credit card. No more skipping lines for the immaculately dressed or wealthy-looking alone. Elijah watched with quiet satisfaction. A staff member named Isaac approached him. "Isaac, hi there. Can I help you with something today?" Not recognizing Elijah as the boy from the infamous incident, Isaac's tone was relaxed, sincere. Elijah simply smiled. "Elijah, I'm just here to see how things are going. It looks better now." It was a small but meaningful moment. He felt lighter seeing real changes taking hold, though he knew deeper cultural shifts would take time. Although Glendale's problems had subsided, widespread discrimination still lingered in the financial sector. Naomi Carter consistently reminded her executive team, "Naomi, this is only the beginning. We must remember one small voice shook an entire branch. Now we need to amplify that voice and ensure lasting progress." As for Elijah, once his school term ended, he began attending the Financial Fairness Council's meetings. He was its youngest member, but he contributed a crucial viewpoint. Elijah: "Lots of kids from minority or immigrant backgrounds are afraid to come to banks because they fear being judged or questioned. We need a more welcoming environment." His words were simple yet incisive, and the council's members, seasoned bankers, academics, community activists, listened closely. Asked if one individual can truly reshape a whole system, Elijah replied without hesitation, "Elijah, if one person speaks out and brings more people together, we can make real change. I'm just a tiny spark, but one spark can set off a bigger flame." The story of Elijah Carter, a 13-year-old black boy, initially refused a routine deposit at the very bank his mother oversaw, has become a powerful lesson far beyond Global Meridian Bank. To customers, it underscores the importance of refusing to remain silent in the face of injustice. To financial institutions, it proves that integrity and respect must truly undergird every policy and interaction, or risk public trust and ethical failure. To society, it stands as evidence that one individual's courage can indeed rattle a mighty institution and prompt critical reflection. At 13, Elijah never expected to spark a mini-revolution, yet he recognizes the journey has only just begun. Sometimes, late at night, he gazes at his new ID badge labeled Elijah Carter, member of the Fair Finance Council, and reminds himself, "Elijah, I'll keep fighting until no one's dignity is questioned just because of how they look. I want everyone to see that simple truth." This is just the starting point for a broader quest to create a fairer, more inclusive banking system, and perhaps a fairer society as well. It all began with the quiet determination of a 13-year-old who refused to be dismissed because of the color of his skin or the clothes on his back. Stand up for what is right, even if you're alone, because injustice can't prevail when confronted. It takes only one determined voice to crack open a flawed system. Yet real, long-lasting change requires consistent efforts from everyone involved. Let this story remind us: fairness is not an option, but an obligation, in finance or anywhere else in society. Feel free to share your thoughts. Would you have handled the situation like Elijah? Do you believe one voice can spark industry-wide reform? Let's continue to spread and strengthen the values of equity and respect.